Hi. Well, there's the rest of me. Hi there. How's it going? You only saw the top of my head because I was sitting down. That's the secret. I was just getting my phone synced up so that I can see how the live stream is going there. Let me just get my chair out of the way. Just one moment, of course, as usual, to get everything synced up. Everybody loves how easy to use Facebook Live is. Very intuitive. Never any problems. All right. I'm not getting any reception here. Oh, there we go. Sorry about all that. Sorry for the delays in getting things together. I didn't even have my pens. What was I doing? Well, welcome everybody to the Virtual Vinstitute number 7, hosted for the second time at Tainamara Seaside Spa Resort and Conference Center, I believe is the full name. Beautiful resort here in Parksville. For those of you who were not aware, I'm out on Vancouver Island right now in the Qualicum area, and Tainamara has been kind enough to allow me to set up in one of their conference rooms. Beautiful location. They're absolutely bustling here today. Their restaurant is incredibly busy. They have conferences coming in. And it's really admirable as well how respectful of physical distancing and all the various COVID-19 measures that they're being. The restaurant is busy, and yet everybody is spaced out perfectly. The servers are wearing face shields. Anyways, they're doing a fantastic job of still keeping people happy, maintaining business, and doing all of that in the midst of everything that we are in the midst of. I'm just looking out the window right here. I can see the front entrance way to the resort. I can see the Pines gift shop. I can see the Cedars restaurant. And once again, for locals, half-price appetizers on Tuesday and Wednesday, which is why it's so busy tonight. And 2-for-1 takeout pizza. Tainamara in Parksville. Now that I have all that out of the way, welcome everybody to the Virtual Vinstitute. I am, of course, Moss Sherkogel. I am your host, itinerant wine educator, living like a gypsy on the island, as you do. Sorry, that was really insensitive. Living like a Romany on the island, as you do. And tonight I am here to talk to you about Syrah. This is probably one of the most exciting grapes that we have in the Okanagan. And it has been said, there was an academic study made about the grapes being grown in the Okanagan Valley, and it was pretty widely published and very widely read amongst sort of the wine industry professionals. And this study proposed that the white wine of British Columbia should be Pinot Blanc, because we do it in such a unique and such a fantastic way. And I am 100% behind that. I think there should be more Pinot Blanc, and I think that we should be getting a name for it. But that same study said that the red wine of British Columbia, should be Syrah. Not Merlot, which is the most planted red wine grape in BC, not Marichal Foch, which is the most planted red wine outside of the Okanagan and Similkameen in the cooler areas, but Syrah, which is honestly really only planted down in Oliver and Osoyoos. There's a fairly tight band in which you see Syrah being grown. Certainly, people explore it further up in the Okanagan and out in the Similkameen to great effect, but most of it is concentrated into Oliver and Osoyoos. And that is because Syrah can do quite nicely in heat. Now, before we talk too much about Syrah, I want to get something out of the way right here. And it is naming conventions. Some people might be listening to me say Syrah and have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about, because the wine that they like to drink is, what is it? It's Shiraz. Well, it's the same thing. And if you haven't had somebody tell you that already, then you probably haven't been doing very much exploration of BC wine, because it's something that we love to tell people. Anytime that you go to a winery that has a Syrah, they are quick to tell you, hey, you know it's the same thing as Shiraz, right? And in fact, we have 3 wines for you to taste here today, and one of them is called Shiraz. So is there a right name? Is there a wrong name? Well, matter of opinion. You could say that Syrah is the right name because it's the right name. It's the actual name. It's the proper name, the true name, the name that the grape started with when it sort of first emerged in France. The origins of Syrah are a little bit muddy. People speculate that it came from the Middle East, that it came out of Iran, out of Turkey, but it's a little bit unclear exactly how it made its way into France, but it settled in the Rhone Valley. This is an important valley that we're going to be talking about tonight, and also 2 weeks from now when we go back to the Rhone Valley to talk about the white wines there. Tonight, we're talking about the reds, and the most important red in the Rhone Valley is Syrah. It is more planted in the Rhone Valley than anywhere else in the world. There are pretty decent sized plantings of Syrah globally. Syrah down in Argentina, Syrah in the United States, and of course in Australia, where it is one of their most favored grapes as well. But still, most of the Syrah in the world is planted in France, and it is there in the Rhone Valley, which is the southeast of France. Lots of heat in that area, and that means fantastic growing conditions for Syrah, just like Oliver and Osoyoos. But at some point in Australian history, when the Australians were first starting to get their wine industry kick-started, when they were evaluating the viability of planting vines there, there was one great Australian wine pioneer who went to France, traveled through France, collected samples of different grapes, and then brought back all of these cuttings, all of these plants, so that he could test them in Australian soil. And one of the grapes that did particularly well was, for a while, called Hermitage in Australia, and then they renamed it to the accurate name, which was, to their minds, Shiraz. Now, why is it called Shiraz? Nobody knows exactly, but the strongest case has been made that this original guy, this original wine pioneer, he brought back cuttings of Syrah. He wrote Syrah in his notebook, but all that people had to go on was his notebook. And looking at his notebook, the kind of sketchy, almost illegible handwriting basically led them to believe that the wine was called Shiraz, and that's what it was called. And so for some time, Australia produced Shiraz, and it became popular, it became well-liked, it became well-appreciated, and more than just a few of the sort of wine enthusiasts of the world found Shiraz coming out of Australia and said, man, this new grape is so cool. It's a little bit like Syrah, but it's something totally different and totally wild, man. Until finally it was proven that they're just the same thing. But you could be forgiven for mistaking that Syrah and Shiraz are two different things, because they have two very different sets of flavors. Traditional old world French Syrah tends to be full of savory tones. It'll be peppery, but it'll have elements of smoke, herbal tones, kind of violet floral, red berry, right? Imagine red fruit, a little bit more tart, and these distinct savory contextual tones, almost like olives is a common one that's associated with it. So when you think smoke, herb, violets, olives, right? You get a pretty distinct image of what that wine would taste like. And then you compare that to Shiraz, and Shiraz is well known for being just a complete fruit bomb, jam, right? You're looking at dark berries, blueberries, blackberries. You're looking at big tannins, big, juicy, heavy wines full of this explosive fruit flavor, and usually with a higher level of alcohol as well. And they don't really have those same herbal tones, those same floral tones, or that same savory taste to them. You can get the pepper, absolutely, but sometimes it's just like pepper. It's like black pepper on top of jam. Boom, boom, boom. It doesn't have the same nuance as the old world style. Now, that isn't to say that the old world style is better. There is a complete disparity between the way that these two wines work and the way that they taste and the way that people are going to enjoy them. So I am never one to say that, oh no, you shouldn't like Australian Shiraz because it's not accurate or because it lacks the nuance. It is exceptional wine. And there's a very good reason why Shiraz is now the most planted grape in Australia. They absolutely love it, and so does the world. The world absolutely loves import Australian Shiraz because it's good. And so based on that, the Okanagan has been planting Syrah vines. We still usually call them Syrah because it's, the accurate name. But sometimes we call them Shiraz if it's like a Shiraz. If it tastes more Australian, you'll see that Canadians or Americans or whoever will use the term Shiraz as a shorthand to mean this is going to be juicy and jammy and plump. And we'll use Syrah if we're trying to be grammatically correct or terminologically correct. I don't know, I just made that up. Or if we are making a wine that is a bit more old world in style. But we've been planting this grape in the Okanagan in British Columbia since the early 90s. Certainly some plantings predated that, but a lot of the Syrah plantings came from the early 90s. And that is a problem. You see, there's a bit of a bittersweet relationship with Syrah in the Okanagan if you know the intimate details behind it. Certainly, consumers may have realized that if you go to, let's say, Incomeep Cellars, a winery that we tried last time, 2 weeks ago when we looked at their Riesling. Incomeep Cellars has a Merlot, $30, more or less. They've got a Pinot Noir, $30. They've got a Cab Sauv, $30. But then they've got a Syrah, $35. That's a really good little kind of cross-section of something that you see. Syrah is always a little bit more expensive. And I remember when I first asked a winemaker, why is Syrah a bit more expensive? Do you work harder on it? And he said, well, not necessarily in the winemaking, but in the vineyard, yes. In the vineyard, we have to take great care of our Syrah grapes. And I said, oh, why? Is it a particularly finicky grape? And he said, well, not necessarily, but ours are. You see, in the 1990s, Agriculture Canada only permitted certain clones of Syrah grape stock to be imported into Canada. You could only buy clone 99 and clone 100. And Agriculture Canada thought that they were protecting everybody from disease. They didn't want hundreds of different clones coming in. They didn't want potential contamination. They wanted to limit it. But a mistake was made. They couldn't have known at the time. But clones 99 and 100 have a genetic defect. These poor Syrah vines are genetically flawed. And over time, they will start declining and eventually they will die. And the only way to prevent this is with incredible care in the vineyard. And so there are farmers who have these Syrah plants with genetic defects that need to kind of bend over backwards to make sure that they stay coddled and producing. But it has been said by some of the more, I don't want to say pessimistic, maybe, but just more realistic vineyard managers, that if you have clone 99 or clone 100 Syrah planted in your vineyard, you will pull it up at some point. It will not last. You love the idea of planting a grapevine, Merlot, let's say, and then cultivating it over decades and decades, right? The idea behind wine is that you can have these grapevines that are 500 years old, still producing fruit, and the quality of the wine increases as the vines get older, as they create natural concentration. But the Syrah that we brought in the 1990s will never really get there. And in fact, much of it has already been pulled up. Back in, what was it? It was 10 years ago. There was a big panel. There was a study. I was reading an article from about 10 years ago, and at that time they speculated about 200 acres out of the 550 acres of Syrah in British Columbia was of this genetic defected rootstock. And so that means 200 out of 550 acres were flawed at that time. Now, a lot of that has been ripped up and replanted. Now that we understand, we can get new, different, better rootstocks that are safer and hardier. But the point is, Syrah has a bit of history within the Okanagan, but not all of that history is worth considering. A lot of Syrah plantings in BC are new plantings that have been kind of restarted after old plantings have failed, which is a shame, because it is, as I've said earlier, maybe the #1 most important red wine grape for British Columbia, but it's still only the #5 most planted red wine grape in BC, behind Merlot, Pinot Noir, Cab Franc, Cab Sauv, opposite order, Cab Sauv, Cab Franc, and then finally Syrah in #5. There probably should be more of it, except that we had this bad luck with bad clones. So hopefully 10 years from now, we can see Syrah way up there, maybe in #3, maybe #2, who knows, maybe someday it'll become the #1 red wine grape in BC. Maybe that would be a good thing, because it certainly is delicious. Should we try some? What's that? I can't hear you. I said, should we try some? I can't hear you. This is a one-way medium. I have no idea what you're saying over there. So, today we have 3 wines. The first that we're going to try is the 2016 Jentsch Syrah. Then we are going to try the 2016 Sunrock Vineyards Shiraz. See that? Finally, we are going to try the Road 13 2017 GSM. What do those letters mean? There's an S in there. That probably means Syrah, right? It is. It does. It is Syrah. But what are the other letters? You'll find out when we get to the third wine. Do I have a glass? All right. Tainamara. They even provided a glass. So, wine #1 here today is, as I said before, the Jentsch 2016 Syrah. This is a pretty important wine to the Jentsch brand. This is one of the wines that has become synonymous with the winery, one of their best known and best loved wines, probably alongside their red blend, the Chase. Jentsch, if you're not familiar with them, was founded as a winery. It was right around, I think, 2013. 2013 they kind of got up and going, and it is the brainchild of Chris Jentsch, who is a longtime grape grower and fruit grower in the Okanagan. Comes from Kelowna originally, 3rd generation orchardist, 3rd generation fruit grower. Who was working in cherries and this and that, and eventually got into grapes. Something that that has also become kind of synonymous with the name CC Jentsch, for better or for worse, is the fact that that the winery emerged from the wreckage of a pretty terrible mudslide back in 2010. 3 years before the current building, which was a packing plant, was converted into a winery, there was a brutal mudslide coming down from Testalinden Creek, where the dam broke and it washed down and actually destroyed Chris Jentsch's house. And the story is that his wife and daughter had to run for their lives from this landslide that eventually demolished his property and much of his land, but fortunately spared the building that would then become CC Jentsch as a warehouse, or not as a warehouse, as a winery. And it is very noticeable. It has this kind of there's a term from architecture, cyclopean architecture, where you use massive bricks, so big that it would take a cyclops to move them. And I always think of that when I drive by CC Jentsch, because he has these massive concrete blocks forming a wall out front, but then he has vines growing up on it, and he has a gigantic sort of faux wine tank out front with his sign. It's very noticeable, and inside, you pull into the parking lot, and you get, despite the cyclopean architecture out front, you actually get a very warm, intimate, and very pleasant tasting bar. So intimate, in fact, that they are unfortunately still closed for the season because of the concerns of COVID-19. They have not opened their tasting bar to the public this year because it's just too tight. They just don't have the space to really practice social distancing inside. And so that means that, unfortunately, you are not able to visit CC Jentsch in person right now. However, they are offering free shipping on any case of wine that you order from them on their website. And actually, it's a fun promotion, because if you order 12 bottles from them through their website, you can choose to either get free shipping or a free bottle of wine, a free bottle of the Quest. So you can buy 12 bottles and they'll just throw in a 13th for free as kind of a thank you for your patronage. So that's kind of a nice thing to see. And they actually just did a massive fundraiser where all of the proceeds went to a good cause. So they are really doing some lovely stuff during this time, being safe, being conscious, and giving back to the community as well. So this right here, this is Syrah. We've already talked about that. What does Syrah taste like? What is Syrah like? Well, let's get into it right here. So if you have your bottle at home, please crack it open with me. I opened this last night just to test it out, so that's why there's a little less in the bottle right there. And it smells so good right away. Sorry, the label's a little bit ripped. My bad. So, as we all know, the first thing that we do when we pour ourselves a little bit of wine is we look at the color. Is that going to stay? That's going to stay. It's definitely going to stay. Do you like that? This is actually two chairs stacked up on top of each other, but you're not supposed to see that. The first thing that we do is we look at color. And that's especially important for Syrah because Syrah looks good. It is not uncommon for winemakers to introduce a little bit of Syrah, 3%, 5%, into a non-Syrah blend just to enhance the color. It's a fantastic looking grape. It's got thick skins. A lot of the time winemakers will do a sort of a prolonged cold maceration to soak up as much color and as much of the fruitiness of the wine as possible. But it always takes on this slightly purple tone. So you have this almost cherry juice, purple, almost a hint of blue there, permeating through the wine. It looks absolutely lovely. And the best way to appreciate the color of any wine is to tilt it just a little bit and then actually look down with a white surface underneath. If you have a white placemat, a white napkin, you would put it where my hand is and you would just look down on the wine, and that's going to give you a more accurate impression of the color than holding it up and looking at it. That's always a bit cursory. So you take a look at the color right there, and then we give it a little swirl. If you want to check to see if a wine is faulted, if you're at a restaurant and the fancy pants comes over with the bottle of wine and puts the cork in front of you, first thing you do is yeah, sure, whatever. You can't learn anything from the cork. It's just a formality. You want to move on to the little pour of wine that they give you. You take that pour of wine, you do not swirl it. You do not swirl it. You just pick it up and smell it straight up. Because sometimes faults can be concealed by swirling. You can hide the faults and you can say, yes, the wine is perfect, and then later on realize, wait a minute, there's something that is imperfect about this wine. So if you are checking for faults, you want to smell straight. But if you're just trying to enjoy the wine, go ahead, give it a good swirl, give it some air. You want to get some oxygen into there. Like I said, I opened this wine last night, which means that it has had a little bit of headspace, it's had a little bit of oxygen, and so that's able to kind of interact with the wine, wake it up, get it going. So I maybe don't need quite as much swirling for this one as I would with a bottle of wine that I'm opening up brand new. And so we'll call it there. Take a smell. Never neglect the smell. You know, the smell is just one of the most important things about any wine. Your tongue is so simple. There's so little that your tongue can actually tell you. But your nose is very clever. And it just knows everything. That was not supposed to be a pun. And I don't even think it was a pun. Too bad to be a pun. So the nose gives you so much more information. And this is just, it's pepper right away. I get pepper. I get sort of elements of smoke, a little bit of smokiness. There's actually a very fun kind of deli meat, like a charcuterie plate. This is something that you can get with Syrah, definitely with Syrah, where the yeast interacts with the wine in a specific way. Yeast will create certain flavors in wine if you sort of prolong the exposure of the juice with the yeast. In Pinot Noir, it tends to lean towards things like earthy, like mushroom. In Chardonnay, it tends to lean towards things like butter. And in Syrah, you tend to get this fattiness. There's this combination of the peppery character of the Syrah that mixes together with the yeast and gives you something that tastes or smells like cured meat. And it is wonderful. So it's like smelling a bit of like a charcuterie board. There's that pepper. There's definitely fruit. There's definitely plum. Plum is one of the most common tones that you will get from Syrah. So this is right in line. Okay, very nice. This is a wine that was treated in oak barrels. It was in French and American oak barrels for about 16 months. And so the impact there is that you're going to enhance and bring out that smokiness. You're going to maybe accentuate some of the peppery tones, but you're definitely going to layer in that toastiness, which is going to give you more of that cured meat and bacon fat kind of character there. Okay, taste. Berries, you get brambleberry. Right away, this kind of blackberry tone. Get some dark cherry in that too. It's a really nicely balanced wine. I mean, the first thing that I ever notice about a wine when I taste it is the balance between alcohol and acid, tannin and sweetness. Right, these structural elements, the framework, the foundation that holds a wine together. Even though I immediately started talking about berries, because it tasted like berries, the first thing that I do is I try to figure out the framework. Then I work my way onto the taste of the wine. And part of that is because the first taste of the wine is a little bit inaccurate. It's not going to give you the full impression of what it tastes like until you take a second sip. See there on taste number 2, it just enhances. It just gets richer, it just gets fuller. The fruit just comes in stronger. But what I was saying about the framework there is that on the first taste, you can see that the sweetness is only surface level. There's the impression of fruit, but it's not backed up by sugar. This is not a sweet wine, but it has juicy, fruity characteristics. So there is an impression of sweetness. There's the trick of sweetness without there being actual sugar to it. The tannin is kind of rich and velvety. It's soft, it's supple, and there's a little hint of acidity in there, just a touch, not enough to make the wine taste tart, not even close. But Syrah is actually a slightly acidic red grape. Compared to your Merlot, your Cab Sauv, Syrah is actually a little more acid-based, which is why the old world French Syrahs tend to be a little more red berry, why you tend to get a little bit more raspberry, a little bit sometimes almost cranberry, or red cherry. Delicious. This is still dark berry. If there was too much acid, this would turn into that red berry, but this is still... This is a wine that has a lot of complexity and has a lot of nuance to it, but you'd probably, if you were comparing Syrah, Shiraz in this kind of global sense, you'd probably say it was more of a Shiraz, right? It's had enough heat to bulk it up to a rich, fruit-forward wine, but it is still called Syrah because, again, that's technically the name of the grape, and most wineries in BC follow that idea there. CC Jentsch themselves, I like to call out the food pairings that are provided by the winery because they would know. So CC Jentsch themselves, Chris Jentsch and his team recommend this with bison, or big kind of dense gamey meat. But mushroom burgers, I thought that was quite interesting, and French onion soup, I thought was a really neat pairing suggestion because French onion soup, salty, right? And salty food goes really nicely with tannin. You have tannin in your wine, and it binds together with that salt, and you have these elements of fruit in the wine. The saltiness in the food is going to enhance that fruitiness. It's going to make it stand out. It's going to make it pop a little bit more. So I am confident that French onion soup would be an excellent pairing with this wine. So there you have it. CC Jentsch, once again, 2016 Syrah. This was, pardon me, harvested from the CC Jentsch vineyards that are on the Golden Mile. Oh, I didn't tell you where they are. CC Jentsch is just on the Golden Mile, which is that stretch of highway between Oliver and Soyuz on the west side. So you get morning sunlight as opposed to the east side's afternoon sunlight, which tends to be a little bit hotter. So you tend to be just a little tiny bit gentler on the west side. But for this wine, they actually combine together a couple of Jentsch's vineyards. This is taken from both the Golden Mile and the Black Sage Bench, a little bit from both sides put together right there. And so there you have it, CC Jentsch. They also notoriously have, not notorious, that makes it sound bad, they also famously have large format wines. If you really like CC Jentsch wine and you want to get your hands on more of it all in one place, you can pick yourself up a large format bottle. It's called a Jeroboam, which is a 3-liter bottle. Sometimes called a double magnum, depending on the shape of the bottle. But with your large format bottles, this is just a bottle of wine. This is 750 mils. When you go to double size, 1.5 liters, that's called a magnum. And then you double that, you go up to 3 liters. That is a Jeroboam or a double magnum. And it just goes up and up and up and up and up with all these kind of biblical names until you finally get to a Nebuchadnezzar, which is a 15-liter bottle, which is absolutely bonkers. Name of a biblical king, and also the name of Morpheus's hovercraft from the Matrix movies. So We can all understand and appreciate that, right? So, CC Jentsch, fantastic winery, well worth a visit when they open back up, but for the time being, order some wine online, get your hands on one of these Syrah because it's basically the wine that made them who they are. And so, thank you very much, Chris Jentsch, for suffering a mudslide. Is that tasteless? Wine number two. Wine number two is from a winery that you might not immediately recognize the name of. So I'll let you look at that while I go over here and get my corkscrew. Did you read it? Is the video quality good enough? This is from Sunrock Vineyards. Sunrock Vineyards is a single vineyard operation from the Sunrock Vineyard that used to be part of the grand label of Jackson Triggs. So, who knows the story of Jackson Triggs or of the operation that is now currently known as Arterra? Once again, I can't actually see you or hear you, so don't bother talking to your screen. I'm just going to tell you anyways. So way back in the day, Jackson Triggs Winery starts up in Ontario. Inniskillen Winery starts up in Ontario. T.G. Bright starts up Bright's Wines back in Ontario. The three of these wineries, they are big business. They make some fantastic wine, and they decide to join together to become Canada's first wine conglomerate. So, at that point, Vincor is born. The wine operation known as Vincor, which is those three wineries together. Jackson Triggs, Inniskillen, T.G. Bright, Bright's Wines. And they start out in Ontario, but then they move out west here to British Columbia. Look at that. There you go. They move out here to British Columbia, and they set up in an old T.G. Bright winery building, because T.G. Bright's, as a wine company, starts to kind of fold, starts to kind of close down, and so Jackson Triggs sets up in their place. So the current Jackson Triggs facility, which is just north of the town of Oliver, you drive past Covert Farms, you're about to kind of turn the bend to go to Gallagher Lake, there's Jackson Triggs. Gigantic facility, huge facility, not a prison, it's just next to a prison. It is a beautiful site with all manner of technology and amazing tools and toys to make wonderful wine. And so Jackson Triggs and Inniskillen set up in the Okanagan. They wind up taking on See You Later Ranch and also Sumac Ridge. And then they take on a fifth winery, Incomeep Cellars, which we talked about last week. And since then, they've taken on other wineries. They've represented other wineries. But from the Jackson Triggs brand, for a while there, Sunrock was a name that they used for their top tier of wine, right alongside the Jackson Triggs Grand Reserve series. And so Sunrock was named, that line of wine was named after the vineyard that they have, which is just sort of southeast of the town of Oliver. It's over on kind of by the Black Sage Bench. It's kind of up and behind the Black Sage Bench. It's this absolutely phenomenal paradise of a vineyard. It is sandy soil, deep sand, 300 feet deep in some places, next to a huge granite rock face that just reflects the heat down on the vineyard. So this is where they grew their biggest reds. Originally, their original vineyard managers, they planted some whites up there. They planted some things like Pinot Noir, and eventually they wound up replacing all of those somewhat cooler climate vines with the things that would really enjoy the heat. So up there they grow Cab Sauv, they grow Merlot, Cab Franc, Syrah, of course, and they also grow Zinfandel, which is a bit of a rarity to see in British Columbia. There's not much Zinfandel. It's because it doesn't really take to our climate, but there on the Sunrock Vineyard, you can do it. You can pull it off. And so Sunrock has these phenomenal red wines and eventually branched off to become its own brand. So once upon a time, it was Jackson Triggs, the Sunrock series. Now it is Sunrock Vineyards. They don't have their own tasting room. If you want to try these wines, you still have to go to the Jackson Triggs facility, which is the tasting room where you can try Inniskillen wines. It's where you can try Jackson Triggs wines. You can try Dark Horse, which is an Inniskillen vineyard that did the same thing, split off to become its own. And you can also try Sunrock, although you can only try the Sunrock on the weekends. The Jackson Triggs facility, the tasting room, is open all week long, but if you want to try the Sunrock specifically, you come on the weekend, because that's when they open that up. Anyways, the wines are incredible. They are full of density and concentration from that beautiful spot. And I just wanted to jump back quickly to the original vineyard manager. The original vineyard manager for Sunrock Vineyards was not Canadian. Can you guess where he was from? That wasn't a full sentence. Can you guess where he was from based on the name of this wine? He was Australian. He was an Australian, and some people say that it is because of Mark that this is called Shiraz. That is potentially one of the reasons why. Because he was the one growing the grapes to begin with, and we all know what he would have been calling it. So as a result, the Sunrock Vineyards Syrah is not called Syrah at all. It's called Shiraz, and you know what? It earns the title by being big, full, rich, and absolutely bursting with flavor. I still haven't learned from last week. I'm going to have some water now because I'm now going to have to pour out my glass of Jentsch. Sorry, into my water bottle, my Incommute Cellars water bottle. And here we go. Once again, beautiful, rich color to it. Deep, inky, very opaque. Again, if you try to read through it, you can't. It's pitch black right in the middle, but it has that distinctive Syrah purple. It's something that you can really recognize Syrah based on. I won't say that red wines are always easy to identify blind, because there's some ways that they can almost imitate each other or replicate each other, but Syrah is one of the easier ones. If you're doing a blind tasting and you see that density of color with that rich, inky purple tone, and then you smell it, and if you get any pepper and sort of dark fruit, then you can guess probably Syrah. Now, again, it might be a trick because there's ways that they can kind of sneak up on you, but as far as quickly teaching you how to identify a wine goes, this one's quicker to teach than others. While I swirl this, and this is far too late in terms of custom, but because we're here at Tainamara Resort, I want to acknowledge and give thanks to the Qualicum and the Snaw-Naw-Ass First Nations, upon whose ancestral land this resort is built and in which I am doing this tasting. So, right away there is more density to this. And that's probably, to be fair, because I opened up the Jentsch last night. The reason that I opened the Jentsch last night is because my mother opened it. I am staying at my mother's house in Qualicum Beach. That's a perfectly manly and grown-up thing to do, right? And she saw it in the kitchen and she opened it. So I say that I opened it last night. What I mean is that it was opened. And I told her not to take any more after she had a glass. But the point is, the Sunrock is still taking a little bit of time to open up. I want to give it a little bit more of a swirl right there. They graciously gave me a red wine glass. I usually use pretty generalized wine glasses. You can get these universal wine glasses that are pretty much good for everything, but a red wine glass tends to have a bit of a wider bowl, and that's serves a double function. One function is that it allows you to get more surface contact as it's sitting inside the glass right there. It's allowing for more oxygen contact. A smaller glass with a narrower bowl is going to oxidize a little slower. This is going to oxidize faster, which is good because red wines tend to need more air to open up. It also has a fairly wide rim. It hasn't closed up tight like a tulip glass. And that is to allow the aromas to basically disperse a little bit. You tend to get a lot of concentration from reds, in which you don't need to tighten up, shrink the field so that you get tighter, more concentrated aromas. Instead, you can open it up. You can allow this sort of wide exposure. And the shape of the glass also allows you to swirl pretty competently. There are certainly some glasses where swirling is difficult. Think things like champagne flutes. They're just not designed for it. But this is a red wine glass, and it's got red wine in it. Yay! So it's really starting to pop now, and I'm getting like dried plum. There's juicy plum, but there's also something that's like prune almost, which prune gets a bad rap. It's not just a laxative; it's a tasty fruit, and so what I smell right here is kind of dried plum. This juicy, tasty dried plum. It's almost figgy. There's that's a good term. That's a nice term. Figgy. It's a figgy wine. Black cherry. Lots and lots of this juicy fruit right away. The CC Jentsch. Keep in mind, both of them 2016. This grown entirely on the Black Sage bench, or above it, and the CC Jentsch grown in both the Black Sage bench and the Golden Mile. But the CC Jentsch definitely has more of that slightly old world eloquence to it, right? There's this slightly more peppery, slightly more savory, meaty tone on the nose, whereas this is fruit. This is big, juicy fruit, blueberries and pepper. There's still the pepper, but it's less charcuterie plate and more blueberries covered in pepper. Mm. Oh, that's really good. That's wonderful. It's again nice balanced palate. The alcohol's a little bit higher on this one. The CC Jentsch is 14.1. This is 14 and a half here, 14.5. And that again kind of lends a bit more density, a little bit more concentration, right? It doesn't taste hot. It doesn't taste like the alcohol, but you can kind of tell it's there because there's this richness. There's this volume to it coming from it. But also much firmer tannin. Gotta try phone. Gotta watch how much I drink. Yeah, beautiful grippy tannin to it, but not aggressive. This is a really welcoming wine. I'd say this is really inviting. It's a fantastic example of a big red wine that shows big and juicy, shows all the elements of a red wine that a red wine aficionado would appreciate, but this would be a good wine to also offer to somebody who's interested in red wine. Not everybody loves red wine right away. Some people are intrigued by it, but it takes a little bit of time to work into it. And it's because they can be really off-putting. They can be very tannic. They can have higher alcohol. They can have this sort of aggressive density to them sometimes. And this is a juicy wine. It's fruit forward, And it certainly has tannin, and it has that little hint of alcohol to it there, but it's in no way hard to understand or appreciate. It is very accessible. I'd say that this is a really wonderful wine for just about anybody. If you want to get your hands on this wine, you can get it right at Jackson Triggs. It retails for about $31. The CC Jentsch retails for about 32. This is after tax. After tax, 32, 31. And you can also order it online. And once again, you can get free shipping if you order a half case of wine or more. You can get free shipping delivered to you in all the provinces that they ship to. Oh, did I never finish the story? Vincor isn't Vincor anymore because 15 years ago they sold their properties to Constellation Brands, which was the biggest wine conglomerate in North America and I think the world maybe. Biggest liquor distributor. You know, they own things like Corona and Carlos Santana's brand of tequila, right? So anyways, Constellation Brands buys Vincor. They manage the properties for maybe it was 10 years, maybe less than that, maybe 8. I'm making those numbers up. Let's call it 10. And then they basically had the Canadian properties bought from them again. They changed hands, this time back to Canadian interests. In fact, it is, I believe, the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan that now owns Canada's largest wine conglomerate of what is now named Arterra. Arterra. So Arterra is now the wine group that owns Jackson Triggs, Inniskillen, Inkameep, Sumac Ridge, See You Later Ranch, Sunrock Vineyards, Dark Horse, which is the branch-off vineyard from Inniskillen, and Black Sage. Just Black Sage Vineyard. Which is the offshoot from Sumac Ridge. So they've got this beautiful little collection of very kind of high quality wineries in the area. And Sunrock is certainly one of the finest. I mean the quality of this wine is fantastic. It's a single vineyard label, which means that everything is coming just from that one vineyard, and so you get a real purity of intention in the wines, and it is kind of the best of the best, really. So, fantastic wine. All right. We've got one more here. Thank you, Sunrock. And it is something a little bit different. This is from Road 13. This is their 2017 GSM. Now, we already talked about what the S stands for. It stands for Syrah. But I also said earlier on that tonight we'd be discussing the red wines of the Rhone Valley. Wines plural. And, we can't do that by just talking about Syrah. So we have right here a blend of Syrah, Grenache, which is the G, you didn't need me to tell you that, and Mourvedre, which is the M, again, unnecessary. Grenache, Syrah, Mourvedre, that's this blend. That's what GSM stands for. If you ever see that, that is what it means. This is sometimes called just the Côte de Rhône blend, because that is the part of the Rhone Valley where these are common grapes to grow and common grapes to blend together. And they're a really interesting combination because Grenache, or Garnacha, as the Spanish like to call it, much better name than the French one. Grenache is a lighter bodied grape. It's a little more delicate. Think of it like Pinot Noir. It's not like Pinot Noir. It's its own thing, but think of it in that same context of being a lighter, cleaner red wine. And then Mourvedre is big and dense. It's almost like your Petit Verdot, your heavy duty red, and so the Syrah is kind of the balancing middle factor, and it tends to be the more popular or the higher ratio in the blends, anyways. In this particular wine here today, we have something like 50% Syrah, and then it's maybe around 40% Grenache, and then maybe 10% Mourvedre. Mourvedre is not something you need a lot of because it has such intensity and such density to it. And so Grenache is that lighter, cleaner, more aromatic element that kind of brightens up the wine. The Mourvedre gives it the tannin, the texture, and the Syrah gives it everything in between. Now, this is also an interesting wine because it has a dash of Viognier in it. And you may say, but Moss, that's a white wine. Why would you put white wine into a red wine? Won't you ruin it? Won't you make it taste white? Well, that's okay. Viognier is actually a really versatile white wine that you can blend into reds to basically enhance the natural character of the reds. In fact, you can take Syrah, you can try 100% Syrah, and then you can try 95% Syrah with 5% Viognier, and the blend will taste more like Syrah than the pure one. And it's because Viognier just gets in there, it takes the natural aromatics of the Syrah and it boosts them, it amplifies them. It doesn't make it watered down, it doesn't make it taste like white wine. Instead, it just heightens everything that's already going on. Sounds good, right? So, Road 13. Road 13 likes working with grapes like this. They like Viognier, they like Marsanne and Roussanne, they like Syrah, they like Grenache, they like Mourvedre. They've really doubled down on the idea of doing Rhone wines because it works well there. I talk about Road 13 all the time, and not just because they're an excellent winery that's making excellent quality wine, but because they served as kind of a really valuable cautionary tale about Pinot Noir. Road 13 used to produce a absolutely phenomenal Pinot Noir, a fantastic Pinot Noir. However, it wasn't always viable. You see, they are on the Golden Mile. Road 13 is on Road 13. It actually used to be called Golden Mile Vineyards, Golden Mile Cellars, sorry. Golden Mile Cellars was the original winery, opened up in 1998. Changed hands to the Luckhurst family in 2003. The Luckhursts, by the way, come from Vancouver Island, so represent. And the Luckhursts wound up changing the name. It was I think 2008 to Road 13. They changed it away from Golden Mile Cellars because they kind of acknowledged that, okay, the Golden Mile is a region. It's an area. You can't just call one winery the Golden Mile. It would be like taking a continent like America and then calling one country in it America. Doesn't that seem ridiculous to you? Doesn't that seem a little bit self-serving, a little manifest destiny? So anyways, what they did is they changed the name to Road 13 because that's where their core home vineyards are. And it has been Road 13 ever since. But they used to produce wonderful, wonderful Pinot Noir. Right up until, I believe, don't hold me to this, I believe 2013 might have been their final vintage of Pinot Noir. Could have been 14, I think it was 13. Because then in 2014, it was just too hot. Even though they're on the Golden Mile Vineyard, or Golden Mile Bench, which is a little bit cooler than the Black Sage Bench, it doesn't matter when you get those really hot seasons. And so scathing, scorching heat down in the South Okanagan means that their Pinot Noir was turning out too high alcohol. It just wasn't meeting their expectation. And so what they did is they shelved it. They benched it. They said we're not producing Pinot Noir this year. And then next year it was looking much the same. And so they wound up actually ripping up their Pinot Noir and planting these Rhone grapes instead, things like Syrah. And so for some people, we've used that as a measurement to see where Pinot Noir should be grown. Is it really viable when you start getting too far south, down towards a Soyuz? It gets really hot there. Maybe it's best kept to the northern areas or to higher elevation, slightly cooler climate. But Syrah, well, Syrah does perfect. So let's try this GSM. Immediately, very different nose than the previous wines, right? We have gone through the spectrum of the things that Syrah can smell and taste like. We started with that somewhat more old world charcuterie plate, slightly more herbal. You had that lovely deli meat. You had that savory character coming from the CC Jentsch. I'm gonna have some more of that later. And then when we get to the Sunrock, we start to get the fruit. We get big, juicy, intense fruit. Just voluminous, wonderful, jammy, dark fruit. And now, when we're here with the GSM, taking the Syrah, and this is planted, or this is harvested from not just the Okanagan vineyards, but they also have a vineyard out in the Similkameen. So a little bit of this is coming from the Similkameen. So they've got slightly cooler temperatures than our Sunrock, but still overall hot. But they've blended it together with the Grenache, with the Viognier, with the Mourvedre, and you wind up getting more floral aromatics. Right away, I get this kind of violet. That's the common Syrah flower matchup. I get violet and almost lily. There's a really lovely fragrance to it. So this is a little bit more. Well, it's a little more elegant right away on the nose. Still a little bit of the fruit, a little bit of spiciness, but mostly I'm getting that floral coming in. Not going to spit that out. That's wonderful. Fantastic tannin to it. The tannin is very smooth. It's very rounded. It's present, but it doesn't have quite as much fullness as the Sunrock. Right, the Sunrock's coming in a little bit bigger, a little more heft to it. This is a little bit more gentle, but still, a wine with some concentration, with some density, but it's just a little bit more velvety there. Little impression of sweetness. The residual sugar on all of these wines is low. It's a gram. It's maybe a couple of grams. It's not much to speak of. The alcohol in this wine, 14.4, pretty much the same as the Sunrock. Yeah, there's a little hint of that sweetness. That's another thing that can be carried and represented by alcohol. Alcohol can fatten up a wine, it can give it density, but alcohol is also sweet. You don't usually notice because it tastes like fire, but alcohol does have sweetness to it. And so when it's kind of tinkered carefully into a wine and blended in there nicely, you wind up getting amplification of the natural sweetness. So you get a little bit of sweet red fruit. But I say red because there's a little bit more acid in this one as well. Just enough acid that you feel that little zing, that zest. which is, once again, really quite lovely. Mm. Mm. Absolutely delicious. That's wonderful. Pepper, I'm getting the spice on the palate here, in a way that I didn't necessarily with the previous two. I'm getting more pepper on the palate for this one, and these kind of cleaner, crisper berry tones. Right. Again, you've got kind of bigger, jammier, denser tones, and this one's a little bit cleaner and crisper, a little bit lighter. Still a little bit of that berry jam, but a little more peppery right away. The food pairing recommendations, I forgot. The Sunrock, they really talk cheese when you look at food pairings for the Sunrock Shiraz. They say blue cheese. Not everybody likes blue cheese, but Asiago cheese, again a little bit salty, right? Remember that the food pairing that was suggested with the CC Jentsch, French onion soup, salty soup, salty cheese. This one right here with the Road 13, the suggestion for food pairing was fire roasted vegetables and red meat. But I like the fire roasted vegetables. Something that you can do when you're pairing food and wine together is you look for complementary flavors because they can enhance each other. The trick is finding things that you want to be enhanced. You don't want to enhance the perception of alcohol in a wine. And so, the burning in the wine, you don't want to put it with burning in food. So you don't put alcoholic wine with a spicy food like heat, piquant, spice, because that just, it's negative. But you find things that are positive. And one of the positive things in all these Syrahs, which all of them, coincidentally, have been oaked for 16 months. Every one of them 16 months in oak. This one was only French oak. The other two were both French and American. But something that you're getting is toastiness. You're getting smokiness. And so if you take these wines and you pair them together with charred food, with barbecued, grilled food that has smokiness to it, the smokiness will be enhanced. It'll pop a little bit more. And you'll bring it out in this wine, which can be quite nice. So you can do your barbecue with an oaked red wine, and it just blends together in a really pleasant way. So there you go, roasted fire roasted vegetables and red meat. That's the food pairing for this one. All right, that's pretty much it. I think we're at our 70-minute mark. I base this off of how long a standard high school class would normally be, 72 to 75 minutes, depending on what school district you're teaching in. And so that's about time to wrap it up. Thank you, everybody, for watching along with us tonight. Thank you again to Tainamara Seaside Spa Resort and Conference Center for sticking me into a conference room here. Do you want me to show you what I've done to their conference room? I kind of want to show you right here because these are sort of the conditions that I tend to work in. So there's two chairs stacked on top of each other with a bottle of wine resting on top of them. And there's a chair that is on top of a table to hold my camera. I just realized that I should not have shown you that because people from Tainamara might watch this and they might realize that I've just been stacking their chairs all over the place. But thank you. Thank you for letting me do that. Thank you to everybody who's been listening to our podcast, Uncork the Sun, with the Vinstitute Wine School. I've got a new episode that just came up where I interview the executive director of the Oliver Osoyoos Winery Association, one Jennifer Bussman, and she talks about the Half Corked Marathon, which is coming up, which is a very cool event that has gone in some very cool places. And thank you for watching these live tastings. So everybody, without further delay, I will let you all get on with your evenings. I will probably just lock the doors to this conference room and loll about with 3 bottles of wine by myself. I've got the night off from the kids, so I may as well enjoy it. And I will see you all in 2 weeks for an exploration of the counterparts to these Rhone Whites. So thank you all. And here you go. Let's do the little, oh, clink. Good night, everybody. I just have to